I think a lot of it for me comes from my family, comes from my parents. When I was in the hospital, I knew beyond the shadow of a doubt that they would do whatever it took. I mean, they're walking through fire, they're walking through walls, they're doing whatever they can do. I always thought that confidence was based on what I could do. Like if I was good enough at something, that meant that I was confident.
Well, welcome everyone to this next very special interview. And this one comes from a very, I don't know, just excited introduction that I got from a mutual friend of ours who I got to interview a couple weeks back. And today I get to introduce you to the one and only Chris Waddell. And Chris, I'm going to introduce here in a little bit and say hey and ask him a boatload of questions and have a very conversation I'm really excited to get into. But let me brag on Chris a little bit and tell you a little bit about his background. Check out the show notes. Everything will be in there, how you connect with him and all that. But a few bullets about Chris. He has 13 Paralympic medals. He's in the Paralympic Hall of Fame. He has the most medals of any male monoskier in Paralympic history. He is a U.S. Ski and Snowboard Hall of Famer. He's the Dalai Lama's unsung hero of compassion. I can't wait to ask about that. He is Skiing Magazine's 25 greatest skiers in North America. I could go on. And probably the thing that, we talked a little about before we connected on this interview today is he and I have a passion for impacting athletes, impacting student athletes, especially. He works with schools through his name tags program, which we'll talk a little bit about today, but it's a resilience-based assembly and virtual presentation that helps students get beyond what labels and limitations that we all put on ourselves. The motto, it's not what happens to you, it's what you do with what happens to you. Chris, I could go on, but that's enough bragging for now. Welcome to the interview. Thanks for your time today.
You're welcome. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me on. And thanks for such a nice introduction.
Oh, of course. And so excited to dive in because I want to dive into your athletic journey, your background, how you got to where you're at. I mean, the accolades that you've been able to, just put, that I'm able to read off quickly. It's pretty darn amazing, right? The journey that you've been on. And let's take a step back for a moment. I want to talk about your athletic journey a little bit and how you got to the Olympics, the Paralympics. Where did it start? Because obviously you have the skiing background, but where'd you grow up? How'd you get into skiing? And let's talk about that evolution.
I grew up in Western Massachusetts, so an hour and a half west of Boston, in a little town called Granby. I think it was like 5,000 people. We had 1.5 stoplights. Maybe it's 1 1/3. We had a blinking yellow.
Oh, yeah, the blinking. Okay.
Yeah, we had a blinking one, so you want to count that as something. Yep. And so a small town, we had a ski area that was 10 minutes away, Mount Tom, which was 10 minutes from home. It was owned by a construction company. They had great snowmaking. They had great grooming. They had lights on until 9 o'clock at night. So my parents, who both taught skiing, would pick my brother and me up from school and bring us over the mountain. And I saw the racers when I was 6 years old or so and said, I want to do that.
Yes.
And we had a really very cool coach, guy named Rob Broadfoot, who was our coach. He was in graduate school at Springfield College at the time, wanted to coach, happened to be a mountain right next door. And so he ended up coaching us, which was just absolutely great. He was super knowledgeable about it. He was really encouraging too, which is great, it was about what we were doing well and building on that. So it was really very cool.
That's amazing. Well, so, you start skiing at a young age. Your parents are there. You got this coach, loving life 10 minutes away. I mean, you can't beat that, really. I think you can now maybe at Park City where you live, but, a lot of people don't have that opportunity to go every single day like that and just have that love. Did you have dreams of, making it to the Olympics from a skiing perspective at an early age, or just getting to college, or just was it fun?
It was fun. And I don't know that I was really looking beyond what I saw around me, and I think it's a little bit funny as an adult to think about that there was a separation between what I saw on television and me, right? Those were the people on TV, and I was me. And so I think later on in my life and in my career, I started thinking, oh, I really could have that's something that could have been a possibility. And funny enough, at that point I was like, okay, I want to race in college and I want to figure out how good I can be. And that was really going to be my Olympics.
Yes. Well, I was like asking this question because, especially athletes who want to go from, high school to collegiate level and collegiate level to the Olympics or professional level, oftentimes they have to figure out very quickly, like, is it the dream of my parents to do this, or is it my dream to go to this next level and do that? When you looked at making that jump, was that truly driven by like your passion and drive for it? And I
It
love your opinion on
was.
that.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, it was not my parents. They were tremendous in terms of support, driving us around and getting up early in the morning to go to ski races, and spending
Yes.
the whole weekend on the side of the hill and then going back to work on Monday morning. They were tremendously supportive of that, trying to figure out financially how to make it work. It's not an easy sport that way, so they were really supportive, but they weren't foisting their dreams onto my brother or me. And my brother, I think, in a lot of ways, saw some more possibilities than I did. He's 2.5 years younger than I am, and saw some more possibilities. And I think in seeing where he went, I went, whoa, okay, hold on a second here. This is something that maybe I was thinking about just staying in this little pond here. And there's a way to keep moving forward. And you put yourself into an uncomfortable situation, a situation where you have to catch up. That can be difficult, but at the same time, it can also provide that opportunity to catch up really quickly where you go, oh, okay, this is what I need to do. How do I do it? So
That's very true. Well, I think an important thing that I want to dive into a little bit is obviously you went off to college, right? And then you have an accident and it's now led you to all these records from a Paralympic, perspective. Can you talk to the people watching about like what happened? And I want to dive into that transition, if you don't mind.
yeah, no. So I started in the middle of the year at Middlebury College, and I skied with the ski team, trained with the team, but I didn't compete for the team my first year there. So then the next year, I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to be competitive and push myself throughout the fall and really did a whole lot of dry land training to be as fit and strong as I could, ready to go. And before I really had a chance, we were on snow a little bit before Christmas, but Christmas vacation, I went home and you go to your old mountain and you go
Yep.
ski with your old coach, and this is what you do. And we were warming up, and in the middle of a turn, my ski popped off and I fell and broke my back. And that was pretty much it, and put me on an entirely different yet similar trajectory, right? The Paralympic view of things. I was in the hospital for 2 months, returned to Middlebury in the middle of February. And that was great for me. It was so hard, but it was great. It was difficult because I lost 50 pounds. I lost a ton of muscle, a ton of strength. It's
Yes.
college on a hill. I'm trying to figure out how to get from my room to class. And so that was hard. But then the next year I came back and my coach said, "Hey, we want you to be part of the team, and we're going to get you a mono ski." Yeah, that sounds cool. And so that was the start of it. I mean, it really was. It gave me the support, but it also, I don't know. I had to go and learn how to do it too. It's like, oh, you can still be on the team. And I'm like, well, okay, I better learn how to not fall over all the time then too, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say there would be a significant learning curve there.
It was similar enough that I thought I should be able to do it, and different enough that the first time I made it from top to bottom, on an easy trail, like on a trail that, standing up, I might not even feel the need to make a turn.
Yes. Yes.
I made it down to the bottom and went, wow, okay, I'm here. And I was so mentally and emotionally exhausted because I'd just been gripping it so hard, just trying to hold on, trying to make it from one place to the other. And I was thinking myself down in like, increments of inches as opposed to like collections of feet or, from here to there. It was like, no, no, I'm just concerned with the right now. And I was in active thought the whole time, which is really, really tiring.
Yes. Yeah. When you approach sports and you're supposed to, they tell you not to think,
Right.
right? Let the training take over, right? Clear your mind and do all these things. And to have that level of exhaustion that the whole way down, that would be really difficult.
Thinking the repatterning, but it's also interesting that I went out the first day and then went home and then came back the next day. And somehow transformationally, I was like 100% better the next day. And I think it's partially just because, the exhaustion had set in, but also it's just sort of like, your mind, your body kind of fills in those gaps. And it goes, oh, okay, all right, this is what you do. And so it made more sense. If it had been as hard the second day as it was the first day, I don't know if I would have survived it.
Right. Well, I want to take a step back for a minute, Chris, because you went through a pretty substantial injury, right? And when you deal with athletes, there's different degrees of injury that happen, right? From I twist my ankle to something that happened to you, right?
Right.
And when you're sitting in a hospital bed, I think it's tough as athletes, and I can't imagine what you were going through, but mentally, how did you work through that? Because a simple injury can be challenging. A substantial injury has to be something different. But how did you work mentally through that? Because it had to have been really, really hard from an outsider perspective.
Yes. Yes, it was, but no, it wasn't. So one of the things I don't remember, I went into shock in the accident, right? So I don't remember anything after my ski popping off.
Wow. Okay.
But don't have that, association of like hitting the ground, hearing vertebrae break kind of thing, which has to be a loud noise. I mean, they're big bones, right? And they were pulverized. So I don't have that association of effectively like snapping myself in half, right? But you break your arm, you put it in a cast, you take the cast off, and your arm is back to normal effectively. It's healed. This is the nerve damage that then you're talking about muscles that I had before that now I don't have. Like I really don't have torso muscles, stomach and back muscles below really my sternum, anything that's functional. My lats are a big part of my balance just because they go all the way to the bottom kind of thing, right?
Yes.
And so you can kind of compensate that way. So it was relearning my body as much as it was the psychological, the emotional impediment of the accident, the flashback of like, oh no, it's going to happen again. Like I didn't have that part. I had wow, this is a foreign implement, the monoski, and I'm trying to manipulate it without the full complement of muscles.
Yes.
So that was how do I adjust? How do I find a way to utilize what I have to do what I need to do? That was the big learning curve.
Yes. It's fascinating to me because, again, I can't put myself in that environment or that situation. And did you know, like right away, you wanted to get back on skis? Because having that coach, maybe you didn't even know that was possible, but was that a desire of yours to like get back out there and do it again? Or was that coach prompting that you're like, I want to get back and do this, even though my life's just different now?
Yeah, no, I did. And to tell you the truth, when I was lying there in the hospital bed, I was thinking about skiing. I was like, well, I can't do the physical training, but I can do the mental training. I can prepare myself. And so I can go through running courses over and over in my mind and doing it perfectly in my mind. And I thought that I'd walk out of the hospital, right? Our race at Middlebury was the final race of the year. And I thought, okay, I won't be able to race in it, but maybe I can forerun it. That's maybe I could be back for that. And that's what I thought initially. I went to a race the year before my accident, and there was a one-legged woman named Diana Golden who showed up at this race. And my first thought was, what's she doing here? Like it was a pretty high level race. So there were a bunch of really good people there. And then I looked and I was like, she's here for the same reason that I'm here, that this is the best competition that she can find. These are the people who are going to push her to be as good as she can possibly be. And she was like Jason from Friday the 13th too, of athletes. She was like, like you think you've escaped her, you think you've killed her. And she keeps coming back. She's like, look, I'm going to fall down and I'm going to get back up. And you're like, you're scary. And, which is, yeah, exactly. She was great. And I left that day wanting to be like her, wanting to be like her because she really was the best representation of what it meant to be an athlete and what it meant to be a human being. And it's like, you're not everybody's supremely talented, but you can learn. And if you learn something, then you actually own it. Then you're growing along with your knowledge of that sport. And I wanted to be like her. So yeah, getting back into skiing and getting back into the sport in a lot of ways meant that I recovered because I could share my life with my friends and family, doing the thing that I love to do.
Yes. Well, and obviously, you made the transition, you're back, you're learning the mono ski. You come across as a person who just naturally perseveres.
Sure. Yeah.
And like, where does that come from? Because we're all faced with those moments where we don't feel like it. We don't want to. It's hard. Maybe we're not learning as quick as we want to. I don't know. There's lots of things that happen, but where does that come from in you? And do you face those moments where you're like, I really don't feel like doing this, or like I didn't really want to show up for day 3 of the mono ski, let alone day 2 is easier. But yeah, walk me through that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I think we all have those moments of just like, this is too much. I can't do it. And that's fine. It's just a matter of, do you actually come back to it? Like, I'm going to put it away for a second here. And then, okay, now I see, let's move forward. Where does it come from? I think a lot of it for me comes from my family, comes from my parents. When I was in the hospital, I knew beyond the shadow of a doubt that they would do whatever it took. I mean, they're walking through fire, they're walking through walls, they're doing whatever they can do. I always thought that confidence was based on what I could do. Like if I was good enough at something, that meant that I was confident. Looking at them, confidence took on a totally different meaning in that it was like, I have no idea what's going to happen, but we're going to handle it. Whatever comes our way, we're going to deal with it. And you go, well, that's a sense of real confidence. I can't, one, it seems like you're trying to memorize whatever could be out there, right? And it's like,
Right.
this is something I might deal with, and that's something I might deal with. And okay, yep, I'm ready to go. Whereas the other one's like, hey, our job is to keep going forward. Whatever happens, we're gonna make it work. And I mean, it's so powerful, so amazingly powerful. And you don't always give that sense of achievement, like to your parents kind of thing, for me to say that was the strongest thing I could imagine anyone doing. And for them, I think they'd just say, we didn't have a choice. This is what we do. This is it. It's not, what are you going to say? No. It's like, okay. I mean, you put it in that context, sure. But I still think it's pretty amazing that you were able to do it.
Yes. That's a really interesting perspective, because a couple of things. One is like sometimes we do put it away, but it's ultimately taking it back out and getting after it again, right? And it reminded me last night, my son, he's 16, hockey player. He asked me to hold him accountable to these shots he wants to take every day. It's in the basement, right? So it's nothing fancy, just a net and a little board he can shoot off of, and his stick and gloves, right? It's pretty simple. And last night I asked him, I haven't seen you take your shots today. And he goes, I just don't, I'm tired. I don't really feel like it. And I said, I get it. I said, I bet if you just took a couple of shots though, just go take a couple of shots. And then he came back up after doing like 100, and it's those little things, right? That it's just like put it away, but then take it back out again. And I like the way you phrase that. And then I love that attitude too of like, it's almost like we're going to figure it out. We have to do this. Like we're doing this. It's not even a choice really. It's like, we're going to go do this. And what a cool thing. Like if every one of us, including me, like adopted that mindset of like, you know what, I'm going after that. I want to get to college, or I want to play professionally, or I want to get this job or get a good grade, or like whatever it is, that just that decision right there of like, well, yeah, I'm going to go do that. I'm going to do that. And I don't know what's coming, but I'm going to figure it out.
Things are the necessary steps along the way, right? It's like, oh, just got crushed by this thing. And you go, well, I guess this is the thing that I have to confront in order to take that next step. And yeah, I mean, I look at it, marveling and this is why we have heroes, right? For me, looking at my parents and going, wow, that was heroic. It really was. I need to learn something from this.
I think it's amazing. And everything we're talking about today, I go back to that quote that I shared at the beginning, which is part of your name tags program, right? That it's not what happens to you, it's what you do with what happens to you.
Yeah.
And you're an example of that, of, dealing with an injury, coming back, climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. By the way, getting like all these medals in the Paralympics. I mean, the list goes on and on. I didn't even mention like People Magazine's 50 most beautiful people. I mean, come on, man. Like it's amazing. And, doing, right behind you is a poster of, the movie that you guys put together. I mean, you've done so much and just kind of figured it out along the way.
I mean, I think that's the nature of what we do. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are definitely times that I wish that I knew a whole lot more than I do.
Me too.
Yeah. Well, there's kind of only one way to gain that knowledge, right? Yeah. You assume it'd be a download that you'd be all set. And it's like, no, you need that. You need to, it's the falling down and getting back up that you learn it.
I think that's huge. I want to talk your Paralympic career a little bit. And first of all, first question that pops in my head is, who's one coach that like influenced you in a positive way, and what was so unique about him or her? Like, how did they influence like how you showed up as an athlete and just person?
Probably the coach that I related to the most was a guy named Mike Brown. I skied with him in Vail, and he was the guy. You know how it is. You've had coaches. He was the guy who could tell me what I needed to hear, and even if I knew that he was telling me what I needed to hear, I could still accept it. Because sometimes, your coach is telling you, well, you need to hear this. And you're like, yeah, you're just telling me that because that's what you think I need to hear, and it's like, and you're like, all right, fine. Yeah,
Yes.
It's not resonating. But he was the one who could do that, who kind of knew where I was coming from, where I was originating. And I just had so much respect for him, I think, which was part of it too. And, and I think a lot of that was the passion that he had for the sport. And really, it was probably more of like the central part, like the sort of I don't want to say like the aesthetic of the sport, but it was also just like the essence of the sport, as opposed to sort of the minutia. And granted, there definitely was the minutia part of it, but trying to see where everything connected and why you might be doing something. That for me was always the question. It wasn't, hey, try this. And it's like, hey, try this. And I'm like, okay, why? Why am I trying this? Because if I can understand it and internalize it, then I know why I'm trying to do it. And he was
Yes.
good that way.
Yes. Was that something that was natural for him, or did you help open that up just because of your curiosity or a combination thereof?
No, I think it was natural for him, but I think it was a good combination. I think he and I were on a similar wavelength in terms of our objectives. And so we
Yes.
we kind of connected on like, oh, okay, all right. This is getting here and there. Okay. It was good. So
So this is really interesting, this concept of why, like know why you're doing things, because this has come up on a number of interviews. And when I listen to people such as yourself, Chris, and some of these other pro athletes that I've come across, that is a substantial piece of what they believe has led to their success, is this understanding of, okay, I'm about to do this. How does it fit in? Why am I doing this? But it's like this almost, let's take a step back. How does this fit into the essence of the sport or essence of what I'm trying to do? And it's such an interesting theme, right? That a lot of times, I don't know if you came across other athletes who didn't really care, things like that. I cared to an extent, but as I got older, I really wanted to understand, like, but how does this fit in? Like, why are you asking me to do this? You know, that seems to come natural for you, but like, what advice would you give, like, just athletes of any sport who, I don't know, maybe hesitate a little bit to ask, or I don't know, what advice would you give them to really truly embrace that mindset?
well, I think it's learning in general too, right? I mean, you're talking about athletes, you're talking about sport, but it's school too. How am I going to utilize what I'm learning? How is this going to affect me? How is it going to change my perspective? How is it going to make me stronger in my ability to perform, to communicate? And I'm saying communicate, that's school and athlete, right? I mean, you're communicating, you're projecting, you're part of a team, but you're also, your sport is your instrument, your way to communicate, your way to connect. And yeah, and I think that's what the understanding does, is it allows you to create, it allows you to build off of that foundation of knowledge of, okay, this is where we're going. This is my objective. I want to go from here to there. And if I'm going from here to there, well, the next step is this next step. This is in that line and in that theme. And you end up being your own coach to a certain extent. You want to have that perspective from the outside, but you also want to be able to tune yourself.
So good. So good. I love that. Because I think sometimes we all look to the outside influence to be like, well, he or she will fix me or help me. Instead of sometimes it's just looking in the mirror and being like, hey, how do you want to help yourself today? Like, because often we know.
Often we know, and what are the, I mean, it's kind of like, what are our keys? What are our like hooks, our triggers to be able to find center again? We all deviate and we get off and we go off in a different direction. It's like, okay, how can I come back to center? What's the thing that grounds me? What's the thing that points me back in that right direction? And we've got to do it. And I remember like I played some baseball too growing up and like through high school and whatever. And for a long time, I played around with switch hitting. So I taught myself to hit left-handed, and I was never as good left-handed as I was right-handed. But because it was a little bit more mechanical and I had to think about it, there were times that I'd just turn around and be like, okay, I've got to take some swings left-handed because then it's helping me with what I'm doing right-handed.
So interesting. So interesting. Yeah. Helping you break down the swing almost, right? Or
Yeah. Yeah.
break down that run or like whatever you're trying to do.
Hmm.
That's so good. Okay. I have loads of questions on my paper here for you. Let me let me take a step back here. Well, let me stay on this. So when you're racing and getting all those medals, things like that, I imagine you dealt with pressure, like I mean, it's a competitive environment, right? And you're going up against these really top level athletes, trying to figure out how do I win? How do I set myself apart? How did you deal with the pressure of competition, especially in those big moments when you're going after like it's medal time?
Yeah, and some of it's the perspective. I think some of it is looking at your sport as a vehicle. It's a vehicle to reveal you to yourself in a lot of ways. And there are those impediments that can be crushing, and they were for me, those nerves, that anxiety at the beginning of a ski race, that feeling of just, I'm going to be sick right here, right now. Like I've lost all the strength in my body. It's just completely ebbed out. And like, okay, now when I need to be at my strongest, I feel completely lightheaded and weak. And some of it was trying to get rid of those feelings, those nervousness. And I just did a commencement address yesterday, and I told a little story about sort of coming back after my accident and going, and I'd said in the hospital, like, I've seen the worst that I could ever possibly see. Like, I've come as close to death as I can come without dying, and this is as bad as I can experience. Like, I don't really have anything to worry about. I'm not going to be intimidated, right? And so at this race, and it was a time trial just with my team. So it wasn't a big race, but it was when the nerves came, and I kind of went, well, those nerves are going to tell me whether I can actually do this. Like this is this step that I have to take. And if the nerves are so bad, I want to know that I can perform in the face of those nerves that are so bad. And it's like, all right, it's not trying to get rid of the nerves, because then if I get rid of the nerves, then I've lost my opportunity. It's like, hey, no, these nerves are here. Come on along for the ride. Let's go. Let's do it. And you guys are here. You guys are here for the ride. The nerves are here. And if I win in the face of the nerves, then I've done something. And so it's
That
kind of a game in a lot of ways.
right. And I like the way you phrase that of setting it up as a game. It's I'm learning about myself.
Hmm.
Let's see how we kind of I coach myself through this too, right? And obviously relying on others along the way, probably coaches, things like that. But it's that mastering of who you are and who you can become, and no, that's part of it. And I think that perspective is huge too, of when you're up against whatever that mountain. Well, pardon the pun. I mean, I can't really say molehill and mountain here, can I? With a skier. So, but when you're up against what is perceived as like a huge, huge, huge mountain, right? That in reality, when you keep things in perspective, it's not as intimidating as you really think.
It isn't, and it even, and this happens in so many different arenas. I mean, I just think about like even just speaking yesterday, right? And there's this time, and it's like it's your moment, and they're going to introduce you, and it's like, I'm not sure if I'm completely ready right now, but this is my time. You can't be like, hold on a second, hold on. Okay, now I'm good. Like, nope, this is your time. Like, it's on you. Let's go. And
Yes.
you have to do it. And there's a part of it of like, yeah, that unknown of I don't know for sure. And if you did know for sure, it really wouldn't be interesting. But I don't know for sure. I'm not positive I'm ready. But okay, it's my time to go. Let's go.
It's so true. So true. And, really, when you step in those moments, right, it's that preparation you're talking about. Like, do I feel prepared to go do the thing, even though I don't know what's coming? I don't know how it's going to go. Somebody could stand up and yell in the middle of the thing. You could hit a patch of ice on a ski hill. Like something could go wrong that you didn't anticipate, right? Going all the way back to where we started our conversation. And, skiing's an interesting sport for me. So I grew up in Colorado, Utah for a little bit,
Mhm.
and, grew up skiing. And it's really interesting for me to dive into the mindset of skiers, right? Because snowboarders as well. But when you look back at the competitive days, how did you, like, what was that preparation process look like? Like, what was the strategy like? How did you think through it? When I'm about to come out of the blocks. I mean, at that point, it's done, right? It's go time. But how did you strategically attack that course and make sure you felt as prepared as possible? Like, what were the steps that you guys took to prepare yourself for success?
Yeah. And I mean, some of it's individual, right? But for me, the way that it worked, I felt like training was teaching my body instinct, is what I call it. This is where you're talking about you turn your mind off, right? And you perform effectively on instinct and that most pure part of it, but you've got to ingrain those motions over and over again. So it's the discipline of doing things correctly so your muscles know what they're supposed to do. So that to me is the first part. And that really is the preparation. I often race day would slow things down the day of the race. I'd go onto something super flat and I'd make really, really big turns on a really flat hill because it was forcing me to go through every movement. And it was slowing it down so much so the gravity wasn't taking over. I had to do things technically well, or else I'd just fall over because I didn't have the speed to prop me up. And then when I got into the course, my objective was sort of twofold in some ways. It was one, to convince myself that I'd already made a mistake before I even started. Like I've made a mistake, which means that I'm absolving myself of expectations, right? It's kind of like the expectations are, well, I have the chance of doing this. And well, if I've made a mistake, then I've already lost. But then I'm going to keep going, right? And it's like, get rid of the expectations because they're not going to help you. And especially in downhill, I would convince myself that the race was to the first gate, that, it's a 2-mile course effectively. And, okay, can I make it through this? Can I make it through that? And it's like, get into the game, like get into the race. If I go from the start to the first gate as quickly as I possibly can, then I'm in it. And funny enough, then things really start to slow down. And it's like, oh, okay, now I can. But otherwise, if I'm like, I'm not sure if I'm ready for this, everything feels like it's going 1,000 miles an hour and I'm not prepared at all. But if I'm attacking, then it slows down. If I'm trying to go faster, then I'm thinking, oh, I'm not going fast enough because I just made a mistake there. I made a turn here or whatever it was. It's like I'm slowing down, like I need to go faster. So you're always looking forward. Those were my things.
I like that. Again, I've skied not even close to your level. And you hear a lot of people, like when they're interviewed, a lot of skiers, and, after they're done with those, 2-mile treks down the mountain, they'll comment that it was slow. Like it went by slow. Is that like, cause you're in the flow state and because of the preparation you've had, does that happen automatically when you're going down, or do you have races where it's like hectic? Like you feel like I'm out of control almost?
You definitely have both sets. I mean, part of it is like if you're inspecting a downhill course, you're sort of inspecting it in like, 1/4 mile, 1/8 of a mile kind of segments, right? You're inspecting it from a big perspective of like, okay, we go to here and then there's that thing, whether it's a turn, whether it's a jump, there. So like we're going from here to there, and then there's another section here, the steep section or whatever it is, and this is what we're doing on this section, and so you memorize it in big sections. So in some ways, it kind of slows down. It's kind of like driving fast on the highway, where it's a much bigger section. Whereas if you're driving fast through a bunch of chicanes, like all these turns back and forth, it's like, whoa, hold on, I'm not quite in the right position to make the next turn.
Yes.
And that's when it feels fast. And yeah, I mean, you definitely have these runs where you feel like you're, where more than it being hectic, it feels noisy. and the noisy in the mind kind of thing of like, okay, I'm not in the right place. I'm not, that turn didn't feel right. What am I doing wrong here? This is where you've got this judgment as you're going down the course, which is generally not a way to go fast at all.
Very true.
Yeah.
Well, in those moments, is it tied to one thing? Like, and maybe it could be technique. It could be lack of preparation. It could be, I didn't take the time to get myself in the right perspective. Like, how do you look at those because a lot of athletes are saying, yeah, I get in those moments too. Like, and the sport doesn't matter. Like in baseball, I'd get to like, oh, don't strike out. Right. And I'd be telling myself that instead of like, drive the ball. And there's all those little moments of things like that. Was that a lot of mindset type stuff, preparation? How do you see that? Or does it depend on the situation and run in your world?
No, I think it is a lot of mindset. Some of it is where you are in the particular time of the year too, right? And like, okay, getting things set up. I'm working on something, and if I'm working on something, that's where it can happen because you don't always just turn your mind off in training. Some training or some racing is more specific than others, and you're hoping to peak for those really big races. But yeah, that's essentially more for me where it would happen.
That makes sense. Well, and I want to be aware of time. I've got, two more questions for you. First of all, what's one of your best memories from racing?
One of my best memories from racing, I think that the firsts are usually the big things, right? The first time you win, or the first time you beat someone that you've always looked up to. And so yeah, one of the biggest ones for me was actually even that run that I was talking about with the nerves. That was a time trial. It was just my team, but that was the stepping stone to establishing myself as the fastest guy out there. And I don't know that I was that day, but it was the commitment to what I was doing. It was like I'm in it. I'm in it 100%. And hey, is it going to work out exactly today? I don't know. But then soon enough, and that next weekend was the weekend that there were three classes of monoskiers, and I was in the slowest of the three classes, the most disabled of the three. And that next weekend was the time when I beat everybody in all the classes. And I went, okay, like this is it. And it's kind of like, well, it's real today, but it's a whole lot more real if you do it again tomorrow. Like, let's make this one a habit. So
Yes.
yeah, that was a big one. That was a big one. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. I love how you light up when you talk about it too. And I would do the same if asked about mine as well.
Yeah.
Last question, then I'll obviously give you some time to talk about where people can connect with you, things of that nature. But I go back to what we talked about kind of towards the beginning, related to your name tags program and what you do for schools. And I just want to give you a minute to talk about like what that motto means to you. And to reiterate the motto for everyone watching and listening is, it's not what happens to you, it's what you do with what happens to you. Chris, what does that mean to you, and what does that mean to everyone watching right now?
Yeah, I think the intention of it was for it to be as universal a message as possible, right? So I'm in a wheelchair, and you go, oh, well, your challenges are bigger than my challenges. No, not necessarily. Some of them are, like the top shelf that's a really big challenge for me. It might be an easier challenge for you. But what we're talking about, like performance challenges, trying to find the best in myself, you trying to find the best in yourself, we share a really similar journey and trying to unlock those doors to figure out, how can I get to there? How can I open myself up to this performance? How can I be like a little kid performing in the backyard in the biggest moment in my life? How can I do that? How can I gain that sense of purity, that sense of creativity, that sense of just sheer joy? And so that's what, and it's not what happens to you, it's what you do with what happens to you. It came from being a ski racer. Something's always going wrong. Equipment, course prep, the hill, the conditions, the weather, the competition, whatever it is, there are many, many many opportunities to say no. Like, yep, that's it. Today is just not going to be the day. And you go, well, let's see if we can answer that question in terms of how it can be the day. It's not what happens to you. It's what you do with what happens to you. That's finding the way to perform on that day when you said, no way, this can't be the day.
So powerful.
Thanks.
The little choices that we make. And, I'm just inspired by your story, by what you've done. And, we just scratched the surface of, what you've accomplished. And I know we'll continue to accomplish, and challenges to take on and all those sorts of things. And you're just an absolute inspiration to me, Chris. And I just can't thank you enough for you spending your time with me today, with everyone watching and listening right now. And I want to make sure they can connect with you and make sure they follow you or tweet you or whatever, X you or whatever the terminology is today. But how can people best connect with you, check you out, find out about, the name tags and all the speaking that you do? But, what's the best way people can connect?
Sure. A couple of different ways. So, Chris Waddell Inc. is my business website. onerevolution.org. So ONE revolution.org is the foundation website. So that's where name tags is. Chris Waddell Living It on Instagram is another way that they can reach me. I'm not big on X. I think I missed that boat. So yeah. Instagram is a good way to connect with me, and especially that's a way that you can find me, but you can also, send an email on either of the websites too, that'll find their way to me, whether Chris Waddell Inc. or One Revolution.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
And everyone, I please urge you to go to the show notes, connect with Chris, follow Chris, send Chris an email, right? And if you're an athlete or a coach and name tags is interesting to you, bring him in. I know he'll have a massive impact. If you are a corporate individual watching this or listening to this right now and you need an amazing speaker for your organization, Chris is one of those guys that I would highly recommend. So with that, Chris, thank you again so much. Can't wait to talk next time and hopefully meet you in person one of these days, but thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks a ton. Great to talk to you, Matt, and look forward to talking to all of you too.
Absolutely. All right, everyone, I want to say a quick thank you for watching today. Please check out all the other episodes that we have. As you know, if you want to be the best, you have to learn from the best, right? To keep things in perspective, to learn the habits, the mindset that separate people from others. Chris is one of those examples, and we have many more on the YouTube channel. So go to Pro Athlete Advantage right now on YouTube and watch more videos. Thank you for your time. See you on the next interview.